Welcome to another episode of Ingrid's World. I'm your host, Ingrid Paris Hicklin. On this show, meet Cheryl L. Wade, the Harold M. McNiece, professor of law at St. John's University School of Law. Her book, Predatory Lending and the Destruction of the African American Dream, was published by Cambridge University Press and was co-authored with Dr. Janis Sarra. Professor Wade is a member of the American Law Institute, national organization of prominent judges, lawyers, and academics who work to clarify, modernize, and reform the law. Well, welcome, Professor Wade. I am thrilled to have you here on the show. I always like to start out and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and to talk to your audience about my work. I am from New York City. I was born and raised here. I was born in Queens, New York. But I moved into Manhattan as soon as I reached the age of adulthood, so I really claimed Manhattan as my home. But I am the daughter and granddaughter and great-granddaughter of Southern people of African descent who migrated here as part of the Great Migration to New York City. So I have Southern roots, and Virginia is the home of both my mother's mother and my mother's father. So I have deep roots in Virginia.
Oh, wonderful. Oh my, so it's most appropriate that you have circled back to be on a show that is anchored here in Northern Virginia.
I think so.
Oh my goodness. So tell us about your education.
Well, I'm a product of the New York New York City public school system only for 2 years. And other than that, my parents thought because of the school system that they should send me to these small, all-Black religious schools. I went to State University of New York, where I majored in Spanish. I minored in political science because I thought I'd always liked to be a lawyer. But at the time that I graduated from college, even though I wanted to be a lawyer from the time I was a child and watching Perry Mason on TV and first learning about Thurgood Marshall, the first Black Supreme Court justice, and I told my family I wanted to be a lawyer, but my mother thought it would be safer, more secure, if I became a teacher, like she is or was. She's a retired school teacher now. She became a school administrator. And those were the jobs that little girls aspired to when I grew up in the 50s and the 60s and even the 70s. We became teachers, we became social workers, we became nurses. But for the most part, we did not aspire to be doctors or lawyers.
Yes.
And I think that's because those were areas that were just almost impossible to break into in those decades of the mid-20th century. So even though I majored in political science, majored in Spanish and minored in political science, I became a public school teacher, teaching Spanish to junior high school and high school children. And those were the years where I was just finding myself. I lived in the Caribbean for about a year and a half teaching Spanish. And then after that, at the old age of 29, I decided to go to law school. And just enjoyed those 3 years so very much. I went to Hofstra School, and I have a master's in Spanish. So it's not exactly the kind of education that prepares one for law school, but you don't really need anything specific to prepare for law school.
Wow, what a discipline. Oh my goodness. So now, your career, touching about, you're at St. John's, you're a professor there, a prominent, professor there. And touch on a little bit about your career before you launch into the book.
Well, after I graduated from law school, I went to work for a large corporate law firm. And that was not my intention when I went to law school. I had intended to be a civil rights lawyer. I wanted to do social justice work. But when I found out in law school how much money corporate lawyers worked, I changed directions. And I worked for a large, prominent firm, Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Morton, and Garrison in New York City. Very reputable firm, kind people at the firm, kind and generous. I learned so very much at Paul Weiss. I got to meet people and do things that I would never have been able to do if I had not gone to Paul Weiss. For example, I worked for the Gracie Mansion Conservancy, which is the home of the mayor of New York City.
Yes.
And so I got to spend time in the mansion, in Gracie Mansion, and I met Joyce Dinkins, the first Black mayor's wife. And I would never have had that opportunity if I had not worked for Paul Weiss. I got a chance to do a little bit of entertainment work when a music publishing company merged with another company, and I went through contracts in Los Angeles with Rick James' signature and Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell. So it's a wonderful experience. It was very hard work. Not that I don't work hard now, I do, but it's a different kind of hard work that wasn't well suited for me personally. There were about 400 attorneys at the firm, and only 6 of the 400 attorneys were Black. There were 85 partners. I'm sorry, 80. I think there were 400 attorneys and 85 partners. Not one of those 85 partners was Black or of color, and only 5 of those 85 partners were women. So I knew that I did not want to try to make partner. I wanted to work at the firm for about 5 or 6 years. I knew that I wanted to be a law teacher. I knew that that would suit me much better than law practice. I didn't want to have to answer to clients. I wanted to think about political, social, philosophical issues and the way they relate to the law, and just think about all sides of that issue and not have to really get to the bottom line for a particular client. But after 3 years, I knew that the pace was something that was not for me. I wanted more life balance. And I was on a deal, very interesting deal. I went into work on Monday morning. The deal didn't close on Monday as planned. I had to spend the night in the office on night redoing documents. It didn't close on Tuesday. I spent the night in the firm Tuesday night, and I didn't go home until Thursday morning. I took a shower in the gym downstairs. I remember this was the 80s, go 80s, when people were doing a lot of TV. But I took a shower in the gym. I took a little nap in my beautiful office on the sofa. But when I had to come back to work the next day, after not having very much sleep, I decided now was time to change my life. And it just happened that at my desk at the firm, exhausted, my former law professor called me and said, "How are you doing?" And my response was, "Fine." And he didn't believe me. And he found out that, yes, I do want to be a law teacher. And he told me now is the time to apply. And so I did a job interview at Hofstra Law School, the school at which I received my JD, my Juris Doctorate. And I didn't participate in the hiring conference. I was too late in the season. So my career is really the result of some very fortuitous, wonderful series of events and people. And I worked at public school for about 10 years. And then I went to do a job interview at St. John's Law School, where I now work. And I actually did a faculty workshop. And the workshop went so well, they said, "How would you like to come here to work?" And I said, "Okay," because it would be nice not to have colleagues who are my former professors. And there's a little sense of discomfort there. So I've been at St. John's now for about 19 years.
Wow, well, congratulations and the wonderful work that you are doing there and inspiring so many more people too. Well, now let's talk about predatory lending and the destruction of the African American dream. Tell us about your book.
It is a book about race discrimination and economic exploitation that targets people of color. But my co-author and I focused on people of African descent, on Black people, African Americans, Black Americans. We could have told a similar story about Latinx individuals, but the Latinx community was not targeted for expensive, high-cost predatory loans to the same extent as were African Americans. And so my book with Janis Sarra is a book about the predatory practices, the discriminatory practices of financial institutions, large and small, including some major players like Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and some small mortgage lenders. And what we do in the book, we take a very close look at the practices, at the cheating, at the predation, at the lies that were told to get Black Americans to take out home mortgages that were very expensive, that had high interest rates, even though these borrowers had very good credit histories, even though the borrowers qualified for lower costs. And in our book, we show how similarly situated white borrowers were given more affordable, lower cost loans. And we identified the fact that Black Americans were specifically targeted because they were Black. So it's a story of greed. It's a story of an attempt to maximize profits through the exploitation of Black Americans, something that has been happening in this country for centuries, since our foreparents were brought to these shores as enslaved Africans.
Right.
Labor was exploited, and when slavery was abolished, sharecropping further exploited them. And there's so many examples throughout history. My co-author and I wanted to make clear the fact that this kind of economic exploitation continues in the 21st century.
In the 21st century. So you have a video, and what we're going to do, we're going to pause and first give us the introduction of the video. Tell us what we're watching.
So not only do we tell the stories of the financial institutions, we tell the stories of the victims themselves.
Yes.
We talk about how the predatory lending destroyed individuals' lives, destroyed the businesses they owned because all of their money went to paying these predatory loans, even though they qualified for cheaper loans. We talk about the harm to families of the victims and to entire communities. We interviewed predatory lending victims in Detroit and in Baltimore and in New York, and we got their stories, the details of their stories. And that's what makes this book very different. It tells the details of the predation itself. It tells the details of the impact on the victims' lives, and the fact that even now, even this year, even in the 21st century, victims continue to face predation as they try to negotiate what's called a modification. And this is something that banks traditionally did. They modified loans when borrowers had difficulty paying the loan. And they're still being exploited, even in this process, years, decades after the economic. So this song is an ad hoc choir with about 11 of my friends and 11 members of Bethany Baptist Church in Jamaica, Queens, which is at the epicenter of predatory lending. At the church, we recorded the song, and we used the song for educational purposes. But the lyrics of the song tell the stories of the victims as we interviewed those victims. So these are the stories of just a few of those victims.
Well, it's moving, so we're gonna pause and have our readers watch this wonderful moving video.
brings me to the rainbow's end. Yeah, the place I share alone with my daughter and a friend. Time came for them to move on, to set up on their own. I signed the papers at the library. All the things I wish I'd known. It backs up the recession. They get everywhere. When everyone is struggling, no one wants to do their hair. The more I fell behind, the more the banks put out their fees. They sold my mortgage on and then put up the price and sold it on again. And after 9 long years, they went and took away the keys.
At first we were suspicious, said we wouldn't sign. They made another offer, and we figured it was time. We lost our jobs, asked for help. The bank agreed to be with a plan to drain our savings and leave us on the street. We sought for an inspiration, knew the end was coming soon. When we drove to their head office, they gave us t-shirts and a balloon. Our marriage is in trouble, but every single day we will carry on the fight, 'cause we know this can't be right. We no longer sleep at night, but lie awake and pray.
Saw me as black.
Saw me as black,
Saw me as a woman.
saw me as a woman.
As a
Nobody making a fuss.
They saw me as poor.
Saw me as poor,
Saw me as
saw me as easy. I bet they just didn't care about us. Struck by a passing car, crossing the street. The least of my problems was being knocked off my feet. 6 months out of work is a long time without pay. Then the bank said, "We got it wrong, we need $5,000 right away." That's when the charges started getting out of hand. I can't keep up, and in 18 months, I owe them 18 grand. They pressure me to sell out, resist the market law. So they force me to accept. Longer yet, longer than yet. Everything all right as we reach our destiny. Oh God, we thank you and we praise you and we lift you up in Jesus' name. Amen.
That was a great video. Thank you so much for showing this to us. So you wrote this book. Who should be reading your book?
Anyone who cares about Black people, anyone who cares about the history of this country, anyone who has heard about the racial wealth gap, the huge disparity in wealth between Black Americans and white Americans, and wonders why. Anyone who's heard the victim blaming narratives that, well, you know, if Black people would only work a little bit harder, maybe there wouldn't be this wealth gap. We show why the wealth gap exists. And I really don't want to get political, but I just can't avoid it right now. I just want to just tell you one of the biggest motivating factors in writing the book. In 2012, when Mitt Romney was trying to defeat President Obama, as President Obama sought re-election, Mitt Romney gave a speech before the NAACP. And he explained to them that one of the things that Mitt Romney would do would be to dismantle Obamacare. And he got a very cold, not approving response from the audience, the Black audience at the NAACP. And when Romney explained the reaction, he said, well, if they want free stuff, they should vote for someone else. Fast forward to 2015, when Jeb Bush was attempting to get the nomination of the Republican Party to run against Hillary Clinton. He was asked why Black people should vote for him. And he said, because we offer this, I'm paraphrasing Jeb Bush now, he said, well, we offer a message of hope and inspiration. We don't offer Black people the opportunity to stand in line and get taken care of and get free stuff. We inspire Black people to earn, achieve success. And of course, we know how to achieve success. We have earned that success.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of candidate Biden. When he was asked what his agenda would be for Black Americans, he said that his goal was to help Black Americans gather wealth, accumulate wealth. And my problem with that statement, even though I will vote for him, my problem with that statement is that Black Americans know how to accumulate wealth. They don't need help in gathering that wealth. They simply need help with legislation and regulations that prevent the theft of that wealth.
So we have like about a minute left, and words of advice, because it's powerful, people are going to watch it. When we're making financial decisions, you know, as people, what should we be looking at?
That's a hard question, because even though I've written this book, and even though I practice corporate law, and even though I teach corporate law, I haven't always made the best financial decisions with respect to the cell phone I bought, for example. And so my advice would be to read the contract, and when there's something you don't understand, to seek legal help. If you can retain a lawyer, retain a lawyer. But there are bar associations where you can find lawyers who do pro bono work and can give you advice with respect to contracts that you may enter into. But do some due diligence if you can.
Powerful. I have to thank you so much for being on the show, because inspiring that I feel as if you're going to inspire a group of people who are going to be out there watching, since I want to be just like Professor Wade. I too. Yes, absolutely. And you can do it. You're inspiring. You're the new Perry Mason. Definitely, without question. So thank you so much, Professor Wade, for being on Ingrid's World.
Thank you so much for having me.
My inspirational quote is from U.S. Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Fight for things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Thank you for watching Ingrid's World, and don't forget to friend us on Facebook and follow Ingrid's World VA in Twitter and Instagram. And if you miss an episode, please watch Ingrid's World on YouTube or at ingridsworld.org. Thanks for joining us.